Welcome back. You're watching Beyond World is One. This is World DNA, the show that gets you ahead of the rest. I'm Shivan Chandna.
And I'm Raisha Sehgal. On World DNA today, the United States has expressed deep concerns over Israeli strikes on Lebanon and has urged Israel to take steps to ensure the safety of the UN peacekeeping mission in Lebanon. Meanwhile, Israel's Defense Minister Yoav Gallant has warned that Israel's strike on Iran will make the world understand about Israel's might. We'll get you that story on the show today.
Also right here on World DNA, we are a little over a week away from the US presidential polls. US Vice President Kamala Harris is slated to present her final case now to the American people from the ellipse in Washington. It is the same site where former US President Donald Trump spoke before the January 6th riot. We will be bringing you all the details on that front as well. This is World DNA. Let's start you off with the headlines.
At least 6 buildings leveled in southern Beirut as Israel unleashes wave of airstrikes on Hezbollah targets, claims Lebanese state media.
US Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin expresses deep concern to his Israeli counterpart Yoav Gallant over strikes on the Lebanese army after 3 soldiers killed over the weekend in alleged Israeli attacks.
Turkey launches strikes on Kurdish militants in Iraq and Syria after blaming them for an attack that killed 5 people at a defense firm near Ankara.
Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi returns home after the 16th BRICS summit in Gaza, hails improvement in India-China ties, saying LAC agreement is crucial for global peace.
Suspected drunken driver heading wrong way past within feet of Vice President Kamala Harris's motorcade following a campaign stop in Wisconsin, says a sheriff.
Mumbai police arrests man from Jamshedpur city who was threatening Indian film actor Salman Khan and demanding a ransom of 5 crore rupees.
Barcelona ended a decade-long winless run against Bayern Munich. Refrain scores a hat-trick as the Catalan Giants rout the German Giants 4-1 in the Champions League.
Israel's Defense Minister Yoav Gallant has said that his country's planned airstrikes on Iran will make the world understand Israel's military power.
And this statement comes after a visit to the Hazatrim Air Base on Wednesday. Gallant told the Air Force crew that after striking in Iran, the world will understand Israel's might and its enemies will also learn a lesson, making it extremely clear that Israel still intended to strike back in response to Iran's October 1st missile attack.
The Air Force is a key element in this matter, and anyone who tries to harm us will be harmed. This is also true for Iran. After we attack in Iran, they will understand both in Israel and in other places what your preparation process includes, and the arrangements and your readiness. And we have a very high confidence in your abilities, personally in each of you, as a group and as a squadron, and of course, full confidence in the Israeli army.
Israel unleashed a wave of airstrikes on Hezbollah's southern Beirut stronghold on Wednesday night. And according to Lebanese state media, 6 buildings were leveled in at least 17 Israeli raids, marking one of the most brutal nights in Beirut's southern suburbs since the war erupted on the 23rd of September. Footage showed explosions in the embattled area after the Israeli army issued evacuation warning for the area where Hezbollah holds sway.
Lebanon's health ministry says an Israeli airstrike targeting an office belonging to a Beirut-based TV station killed one person, while 5 other people, including a child, were wounded. TV channel Al Mayadan, which is politically allied with Hezbollah, said its office on the outskirts of Beirut's southern suburbs was also targeted.
In southern Lebanon, Israeli strikes pounded Tyre, leaving swathes of its center in ruins and sparking a new exodus from the coastal city. Area Disaster Management Unit said 7 buildings were leveled and over 400 apartments were damaged in these strikes.
On the other hand, Hezbollah said it struck a military manufacturing firm in the Tel Aviv suburbs with rockets, claiming that the hit was accurate. The militant group also said that launching drones towards a military base near the north Israeli city of Haifa on Wednesday. Hezbollah claimed its fighters killed more than 70 Israeli soldiers in its clashes with the Israeli forces, while Israel said it lost around 20 soldiers inside Lebanon since its ground operations began, and around 30 more in Hezbollah attacks on northern Israel.
Furthermore, U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin expressed deep concern to his Israeli counterpart Yoav Gallant over strikes on the Lebanese army after 3 soldiers were killed over the weekend in the country's south. In Gaza, medics and residents said that 42 people were killed on Wednesday as Israeli forces intensified a siege of northern parts of the Palestinian enclave, surrounding hospitals and refugee shelters and ordering residents to head towards the south now.
Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, before traveling from Israel to Saudi Arabia on Wednesday, said that it is absolutely essential that humanitarian aid gets to the people who need it in Gaza.
A couple of weeks ago, Secretary Austin and I wrote to the Defense Minister, Strategic Affairs Minister, with a list of things that need to happen in order for assistance to get more effectively to people who need that assistance. So we went over that in some detail yesterday, and I can report that there's progress made, which is good, but more progress needs to be made.
And well, for more on this, our correspondent Susan Tehrani brings you more details from New York. Take a look.
The Biden administration is exploring alternative solutions to the Gaza conflict as Antony Blinken continues his 11th trip to the region. Secretary of State Antony Blinken discussed these alternative options with families of hostages, including a brief pause in the Gaza conflict in exchange for several hostages. Now, this is an approach that differs from that comprehensive ceasefire plan proposal that was put forth months ago and the one that Hamas rejected. Israel and Egypt are now in discussions for a shorter ceasefire, about 1.5 weeks, hoping to release some of the 101 remaining hostages. U.S. officials hope that Hamas will be open to negotiations now that their leader, Yahya Sinwar, has been killed. But Hamas says that they will not come to the negotiating table, at least not for now, until Israel guarantees that they will leave Gaza. Many analysts believe that this brief pause in the fight in Gaza will also help humanitarian efforts, which in turn may help the negotiations. Susan Tehrani reporting from New York for WION The World this one.
Seeing on to stories from West Asia, Israel has intensified its siege on northern Gaza once again. The Israeli military has issued evacuation orders from Palestinians in the war-torn strip.
Now, in the enclave's largest refugee camp of Jabalia, the humanitarian crisis is deepening and it's happening by the hour. Gaza Health Ministry says over 700 Palestinians have lost their lives in Jabalia camp within a span of 19 days. Israeli army released a video appearing to show thousands of Palestinians leaving Jabalia. IDF claims over 20,000 Palestinians have moved from this area.
Meanwhile, in Gaza South, crowds of Palestinians gathered at a bakery in Khan Yunis, scrambling, with some families saying that they have to wait for hours. A global monitor said that the entire strip remains at risk of famine and is experiencing emergency levels of hunger.
من الساعة 7 الصبح عشان اخذ ربطة خبز اطعم الولاد صغار ولادي طبعا وفش ولا سيرج ولا سكر ولا طحين ولا لحمة ولا سمك كله سبب الاحتلال الصهيوني سكر علينا المعابر.
Israeli strike on a vehicle killed an UNRWA employee in Gaza on Wednesday. The agency says over 200 UNRWA staff have been killed and two-thirds of the agency's facilities in Gaza damaged or destroyed since the war erupted early last year. UNRWA and the wider humanitarian response to Israel's military operations in Gaza have been a bone of contention in this conflict. Israel has been accused of restricting aid to Gaza, and US has allotted Israel 30 days to increase the flow of humanitarian aid in the war-torn strip.
The war between Israel and Hamas has devastated the Palestinian economy and left nearly all of Gaza's population in poverty. UN says that Gaza remains under blockade. It could take 350 years for its battered economy to return to its precarious pre-war level. The agency added that life indicators such as health and education in Gaza is rather knocked back to 70 years because of the ongoing war.
There was a major terror attack in Turkey, and in the latest, Turkey has said that it has launched strikes on Kurdish militants in Iraq and Syria after blaming them for the attack at a defense firm near Ankara.
At least 5 people have been killed and 13 injured in a blast outside the headquarters of the Turkish aerospace industries near the capital. Well, sources said that the attack was carried out by those who came to the compound in a taxi. CCTV footage showed 2 attackers pointing guns at civilians and entering a building of Turkish state aviation company.
Turkey's President Erdogan shared details of the attack with Russia's President Vladimir Putin at a meeting on the sidelines of the BRICS summit in Kazan.
I especially thank you for your condolences. We have 4 martyrs and 14 injured. I condemn this heinous terrorist attack and wish God's mercy to our martyrs.
The attack took place in Kaza complex of Tuzias, which is located around 40 kilometers away from the capital Ankara. Security forces neutralized 2 terrorists. Emergency services were dispatched to the site and some of the employees of the company taken to the safer place.
Turkey's Western allies signalled their full support for Ankara in the wake of the bombing. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte condemned the attack and said NATO is monitoring the developments. White House also condemned the deadly attack on a Turkish defense firm. In a statement, National Security Council spokesman John Kirby told journalists, and I'm going to quote here, "While we don't yet know the motive or who is exactly behind it, we strongly condemn this act of violence."
SWAT teams have been deployed with helicopters and armed vehicles seen around the area there. So far, no group has claimed responsibility for the assault. But Turkey's interior minister said in a statement that the attackers of aviation site near Ankara were highly likely members of the Kurdish militant group PKK. Tuzaz is one of Turkey's most important defense and aviation companies with around 10,000 employees. It manufactures Khan, which is the country's first national combat aircraft, and also maintains Turkey's fleet of old F-16 fighter jets.
All All right, the race to the White House is nearing. We're just little over a week away from the US presidential polls. Our colleague Jyotsna gets you the latest. Over to you, Jyotsna.
All right, in less than 2 weeks from now, Americans will be heading to polls as both Democrats and Republicans eye closing the campaign trail on a high. Here are the top developments shaping this race to power. Kamala Harris will make her closing argument on Tuesday against rival Donald Trump. A Harris campaign official has confirmed that the vice president will deliver the key speech on the 29th, exactly a week before Election Day. Harris will speak at the Ellipse Esplanade in Washington. Now, this is the site where Trump rallied supporters on January 6, 2021. In his speech, he had repeated his false claims that he won the 2020 election. Trump supporters then marched on the Capitol. Trump faces federal felony charges in Washington related to efforts to overturn the results of the 2020 election. The Harris campaign official said that the symbolic location aims to spotlight how a second Trump term could go. Harris is a former prosecutor, and she will aim to draw a sharp contrast between her vision and that of Trump, who she says is sowing chaos and division. Meanwhile, Donald Trump's electoral campaign reached Georgia, where he touted his message of border security. Now, Georgia is among the 7 battleground states that will decide who wins the presidency. Both candidates are likely to spend much of their rest of the campaigns visiting Pennsylvania and Georgia. As opinion polls continue to show dead heat in the swing states, 46 states and regions have already started mail-in ballots. Several states, including the battlegrounds of North Carolina and Georgia, set records on their respective first day of early voting. Democratic vice presidential candidate Tim Walz has also cast his vote early for Kamala Harris. His wife and first-time voter's son also joined the Minnesota governor. Earlier this week, as Harris wrapped up a rally in Wisconsin, her motorcade passed an SUV with a suspected drunken driver heading the wrong way. The 55-year-old suspect was taken into custody after he performed poorly on field sobriety tests. Now, an open container of alcohol was found in the vehicle as well. The sheriff's office has recommended prosecutors charge him with reckless endangerment and first offense operating while intoxicated. As the election days nears, reports are claiming that foreign advisories will intensify their determination to influence the U.S. polls. A Microsoft report has said that Russian operatives are doubling down on fake videos to spear Harris's campaign, while Chinese-linked social media campaigns are maligning down ballots Republicans who are critical of China. The tech giant has also said that Iranian actors who allegedly sent emails aimed at intimidating U.S. voters in 2020 have been surveying election-related websites and major media outlets. Now, correspondent Susan Tadani brings you more details on that.
Microsoft says that foreign adversaries Russia, China, and Iran are intensifying efforts to influence the upcoming U.S. presidential election. Russia by creating videos smearing the campaign of Kamala Harris. China by targeting down-ballot Republicans who are critical of China, and Iran, who sent intimidating emails back in 2020, is now surveying election-related websites. Now, they do say that there have been no indication of significant infrastructure attacks or damages. Russia, Iran, and China, for their part, are denying these allegations of meddling in U.S. election. In fact, China's embassy stated, quote-unquote, that China has no intention and will not interfere in the upcoming U.S. presidential election. Iran's mission to the United Nations also said that allegations are fundamentally false. Russia has not denied these specific allegations, but has denied these allegations in the past. U.S. officials continue to say that they have confidence in the security of this year's election. However, they say that voters should stay vigilant regarding deceptive online activity, especially around Election Day. Susan Tehrani reporting from New York for WION World this one.
And well, that's all the updates for today. Back to you guys, Resha and Shivan.
Moving on to other global news. Mrs. Pellico did it, we can do it too. Well, these were the words of Giselle Pellico as she stood before a French court to testify against her ex-husband who orchestrated her mass rape by over 17 men.
As Giselle appeared before the court, a large crowd gathered outside the court to stand in solidarity with her. People showered her with applause and gave her flowers as she exited the courtroom.
She hasn't changed, I find, despite everything she's been through. She's incredible, in fact. I had a lot of admiration for her, and of course, I have even more today. She only spent a year doing my workshop. Some students I may have had for 6 years and I wouldn't remember them, but she spent 1 year here and made her mark with her beautiful presence and her attentiveness to others. Really, she's a beautiful person.
Her husband, Dominic Pellico, is accused of heavily drugging Giselle and inviting strangers to rape her in the southern village of Mazan. Other than Pellico, 15 men aged between 26 and 74 are also on trial for their alleged involvement. Giselle has requested the court to hold open proceedings to raise awareness of the use of drugs to commit sexual abuse.
In a harrowing and emotional testimony before the court, Giselle said, "When you're raped, there is shame, and it's not for us to have shame, it's for them," quote unquote. The disturbing testimony included questions about a video that had been shown to the court in which she is heard asking the person to stop, saying it was rape. She said when asked if her words amounted to consent, describing herself as a woman who is totally destroyed. Giselle said rapists could be in families and among our friends. She is expected to return to the court for further statements as the trial that gripped France and the world would continue into December. Shifting focus to South Asia, Bangladesh's interim government has banned the student wing of former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's party under the Anti-Terrorism Act of 2009.
Dhaka's government has accused that the Chhatra League of involvement in activities that threaten public safety. It was banned for their involvement in destructive and terrorist activities, both directly and through incitement. Now, during the demonstrations that led to the ouster of Sheikh Hasina, government notice said that the youth wing was involved in activities which include murder, torture, campus-related oppression, seat trading in student dormitories, tender manipulation, rape and sexual assault as well.
Sheikh Hasina fled Bangladesh in August, marking the end to her 15-year-long administration. According to the notification, Chhatra League will be recognized as a terrorist organization from now. The ban comes just hours after the anti-discrimination student movement gave the government a deadline until Thursday to take action against the youth wing.
Meanwhile, a leading student group also called for President Mohammad Shahabuddin's resignation over comments that appeared to call into question Hasina's resignation. Hundreds of demonstrators rallied in the capital Dhaka, while hundreds of others they attempted to ban and they came out on the streets.
We are determined to continue our sit-in protest until the resignation of the President and until we ensure the trial of all atrocities carried out by the Awami League men. We will continue our fight, won't we?
Well, now shifting our focus to India now, high security alert has been sounded for big projects in Jammu and Kashmir.
Well, in the aftermath of the terror attack at the At the tunnel project in Ganderbal on Sunday, security agencies have unearthed CCTV pictures of one of the terrorists who gunned down 7 workers in the first such attack in the region. Sources say the blue-tagged AK series rifle used during the attack in Gagangir resembles one used in the previous attacks in the Pir Panjal area. The similarity raises concerns of potential links between the incidents and could indicate a pattern in the kind of arms used by terror groups in Kashmir.
The J&K Lieutenant Governor held a multi-department security review meeting on Monday, asking police officials to ensure tightening of the security grid around key infrastructure projects. Protected is to be extended to construction camps for the workers as well. The Chief Minister has stepped in to assure that all gaps will be covered in Jammu and Kashmir.
मैंने आज सुबह भी डीजी साहब से बात की और कहा कि उनको मशवरा देना चाहिए तमाम उन बड़े प्रोजेक्ट्स को कि वो सिक्योरिटी लाइटली ना लें, जितना वो खुद कर सकते हैं वो करें और उसके बाद जो गैप्स हैं वो सिक्योरिटी फोर्सेस को फिल करने होंगे.
Security measures will extend to security audit of infrastructure projects, round-the-clock security barricading at strategic points, night patrolling and domination exercises as well. Sites with a large number of labourers will have deployments of security forces and access will be restricted to authorised personnel only. J&K's Director General of Police said that sufficient deployments and technical surveillance will be implemented at all such sites. Sources said that focus will also be on strengthening technical surveillance and access control through CCTV. Security personnel will also monitor vehicle movements and exits to prevent terrorists from escaping after attacks.
Over a dozen high-cost infrastructure projects are at various stages of completion in central Kashmir and also in the Jammu region. These include multiple campsites with large population of labour and support staff, where the terror threat has expanded after the Ganderbal attack. The resistance front that took responsibility for the attack on Sunday had specifically warned of more attacks at the infrastructure projects in both Jammu and Kashmir regions. Security forces will be looking to send out a counter message of safety.
The tunnel where Sunday's attack happened is a vital part of the ambitious Zojila tunnel project that will provide all-weather connectivity from Srinagar to Ladakh. The completion target is December 2026. Once operational, it will offer crucial lifeline support to both civilians and military operations.
Well, it's now time for a quick short break, but don't go anywhere. On the other side of World DNA, we'll get you a story of how India and China have decided to work together to maintain peace in the border areas after a bilateral meeting between Prime Minister Modi and the Chinese President Xi Jinping.
And also on the other side, the West Bengal government has ramped up precautions ahead of Cyclone Dana. That is set to make landfall tonight in eastern India. We will be tracking those developments closely for you on the other side of the break. Come right back. This is World DNA.
The Earth is sending distress signals. Wildfires, droughts, and melting glaciers. Can we reverse the damage? Explore the harrowing effects of climate change. It's a wake-up call. Global emergency. Climate Tracker on WION World is One.
To bring the benefits of the Subhash Chandra Show to your educational institution, teachers and students, send an invitation to Juhi Jha at juhi@such.org.in.
WION brings you a special business talk show where we bring forth the stories of business leaders.
From breakthrough technologies to visionary leadership. We will unlock the trends, the tactics, and dive into the minds of the industry's most influential leaders.
WION brings you this special series to uncover what drives them in a candid talk show, WION Business Masters.
WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is one.
Welcome back, viewers. You're watching World DNA with Rahesha and I'm Shivan. Lots more lined up for you on this side of the show as well. Let's start you off with the headlines.
India and China have agreed to give full play to meetings on border issues and work together to maintain peace. This is after Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Chinese President Xi Jinping held bilateral meet at BRICS summit in Russia.
India's weather department issues heavy rainfall alerts as Cyclone Dana expected to make landfall on Odisha and West Bengal coasts tonight.
Mumbai police arrest man from Jamshedpur city for threatening Indian movie star Salman Khan and demanding a ransom of nearly $600,000.
Turkey launches strikes on Kurdish militants in Iraq and Syria after blaming them for an attack that killed 5 people at a defense farm near the capital of Turkey.
At least 6 buildings destroyed in southern Beirut as Israel unleashes wave of airstrikes on Hezbollah targets, claims Lebanese state media.
Suspected drunken driver heading wrong way passed within a few feet of Vice President Kamala Harris' motorcade following a campaign stop in Wisconsin, says a sheriff's official.
Barcelona end a near decade-long winless run against Bayern Munich. Rafinha scores a hat-trick as the Catalan Giants rout the German Giants 4-1 in the Champions League.
Of course, the bilateral meeting of Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Chinese President Xi Jinping on the sidelines of the BRICS summit was a landmark in so many ways, Rahesha.
Absolutely, Shivan. Above all, the culmination of months of diplomacy to defeat tensions. Here's more with Prime Minister Narendra Modi saying that mutual trust will guide ties with China after Prime Minister Modi's meeting with the Chinese President Xi Jinping on Wednesday. Both the sides also agreed to give full play to meetings between special representatives on border issues and to work together to maintain peace in the border regions. Our next report telling you more.
The first structured bilateral meeting between leaders of the Asian giants in all of 5 years. The bilateral talks on the sidelines of the 16th BRICS summit in Kazan that went on for nearly 40 minutes were a perfect reflection of the achieved thaw between troops on the ground. With a call to strengthen communication and cooperation between two huge global players. Modi and Xi did have pull-asides in Bali in 2022 and Johannesburg a year later, but the elephant in the room throughout was tension at the line of actual control, taking on uglier proportions by the day. Now in 2024, the page stands turned.
Prime Minister Modi underscored the importance of not allowing differences on boundary-related matters to disturb peace and tranquility on our borders. And in this context, the two leaders noted that the special representatives on the India-China boundary question have a critical role to play in the resolution of the boundary question and for the maintenance of peace and tranquility in the border areas.
The three-day summit in Kazan is the largest gathering of world leaders in Russia in decades. And the Russian president positioned it more than anything else as a signal to the West amid the war in Ukraine. Putin had a strong message to put out.
There is still a significant risk for a crisis. This is caused not only by rising geopolitical tensions but also by the persistently rising debt load in developed nations, the expansion of unilateral sanctions, protectionism and unfair competition.
As expected, the Russia-Ukraine war and the conflict in West Asia was the focus of the conclave. Primary members of the BRICS as well as new faces of the grouping put out a universal call for dialogue and diplomacy to end the war and suffering on the ground. Beyond the wars, BRICS, representing 40% of the global population and 30% of its GDP, is about rise of the global South and cooperation in areas of their concern. The Indian Prime Minister focused on economic potential.
सीमा पार पिछले 4 वर्षों में उत्पन्न हुए मुद्दों पर बनी सहमति का हम स्वागत करते हैं। सीमा पर शांति और स्थिरता बनाए रखना हमारी प्राथमिकता रहनी चाहिए। म्यूचुअल ट्रस्ट, म्यूचुअल रिस्पेक्ट और म्यूचुअल सेंसिटिविटी हमारे संबंधों का आधार बने रहना चाहिए।
For India and for Russia, possibly the biggest takeaway of the day was here. The achieved India-China thaw coming after months of talks at multiple levels reflect more than anything else the power of diplomacy to change the state of relationships. There's a leaf out of this book that many global adversaries need to take. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
For more on this, WION's Assistant Editor for Foreign Affairs, Siddhant Sibul, has sent us this report from Kazan in Russia. Take a look.
It was a day of big breakthrough in India-China relationship on Wednesday as the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the Chinese President Xi Jinping met. It is a meeting that is coming after a gap of 5 years, and this was in making. The Indian NSA and the Chinese Foreign Minister met on the sidelines of the BRICS NSA meeting which happened in St. Petersburg earlier this year. The Indian External Affairs Minister and the Chinese Foreign Minister also met several times, and it was looking that both sides are working towards some kind of big breakthrough, and the breakthrough came in terms of the petroleum agreement and the bilateral meeting between the two leaders here in Kazan, as it is known as the Kazan Thaw, but also the activation of the SR level mechanism of resolving border disputes. It is led by the Indian NSA and the Chinese Foreign Minister, and it is expected to meet very soon. There are more steps which are being planned, including resumption of the Kailash Mansarovar Yatra, and there could be direct flights as well. And clearly it looks like that what has built up here in Kazan in terms of India-China relationship will go long way in terms of improving the relationship. With video journalist Ajit Siddhansibal for WION in Kazan, Russia.
The West Bengal government has ramped up precautions ahead of Cyclone Dana, which is expected to make landfall on Odisha and West Bengal coast between Puri and Sagar Island on Thursday night.
Well, the Indian Coast Guard said that it was on high alert and had mobilized its vessels and aircraft to respond swiftly to any contingency owing to the cyclone that will bring torrential rain in the two neighboring states. Odisha Chief Minister, he has urged all the ministers to coordinate with the administration in rescue and relief operations in Odisha, which is likely to bear the brunt of the cyclone. Multi-purpose cyclone shelters and other buildings have been identified to shelter the population there. Odisha government has also ramped up the procedure of evacuating around 1 million people to safer places as the cyclone storm nears.
Meanwhile, the Kolkata airport authorities have decided to suspend flight operations for 15 hours from 6 p.m. local time on Thursday in view of the possible impact of Cyclone Dana. The step has been taken keeping in mind the safety of passengers, airline employees, various equipment, navigational aids and infrastructure. The NDRF has deployed a total of 56 teams in 5 states, including Odisha and West Bengal. The teams are equipped with pole and tree cutters, inflatable boats, basic first aid tools and other flood rescue equipment.
Now take a look at the surging global defense spending. While defense firms' stocks have been on a tear, the real cost of war weighs beyond the money. Our next report telling you more. Take a look.
The economics of war can be summed up in one word: costly. As global defense spending rises, nations are finding themselves in a race to ramp up their military capabilities. This is driven by mounting geopolitical tensions. Last March, the EU stock market called for a shift to a war economy mode in Europe, citing an existential threat. This led to the European Commission's Strategic Defense Plan. This includes a $1.6 billion subsidy aimed at strengthening Europe's defense industries. Germany, for example, has heavily invested in arms manufacturing, with Rheinmetall, a key player in the defense industry, inaugurating a new factory dedicated to producing artillery ammunition and rockets. Norway's aerospace and defense company Kongsberg also expanded its operations with a new facility for anti-ship and cruise missile production. The rise in military expenditure is significant. The Stockholm International Peace Research Institute reported a record global military spending of $2.4 trillion in 2023, marking the largest year-on-year increase since 2009. Such spending is a clear indicator of how nations are prioritizing defense in uncertain times. But war comes with enormous costs beyond monetary figures. Beyond defense budgets, conflicts cause ripple effects across economies, driving inflation, disrupting trade, and burdening taxpayers. For instance, while defense companies may see a rise in stock value due to increased demand, the average citizen bears the brunt through higher taxes and reduced public spending on social programs. This imbalance can exacerbate inequality and hinder economic growth. While some corporations, particularly in the arms and defense industries, benefit from these tensions, ordinary people feel the pinch. As markets adapt to the demands of war, investors must weigh the ethical considerations of profiting from conflict, while governments must address the long-term socio-economic consequences. In this age of heightened defense readiness, the question remains, is the cost of war worth its economic toll? Business Bureau WION World is One.
Well, here's a question. Why is gold glittering in a bullish market?
That too, despite stable sentiment and strong earnings, the precious metal is on a relentless rally. The question being, could the geopolitical risks or shifting global inflation be driving this very surge? Our next report telling you more.
Gold prices are soaring, defying traditional market logic. Typically, gold rallies when investor sentiment is low. But today's bullish market sentiment and strong employment figures haven't stopped the precious metal from hitting new highs. This unusual trend raises questions. Why is gold continuing to surge when markets seem stable? One theory is that central banks have increased their gold reserves significantly over the past few years. However, their demand has flattened in 2024, and investment demand for gold through ETFs and bullion has also stalled. Meanwhile, consumer demand for gold jewelry, particularly in China and India, has dropped due to rising prices and a slowing Chinese economy. Geopolitical tensions such as conflicts in Europe and West Asia could be playing a role in driving up gold prices as investors seek safety amid uncertainty. However, this doesn't fully explain the situation. If geopolitical risk were the sole driver, one would expect more volatility in stock and bond markets, which is not materialized. Some suggest that gold's rally reflects deeper concerns about global inflation and shifting fiscal policies. With central banks under pressure and inflationary incidents becoming more common, investors may be adjusting their portfolios to reflect a new economic reality. In a world flush with liquidity, gold is increasingly seen not just as a hedge, but as an asset to hold when cash is abundant. The move from $2,000 to $2,700 per ounce suggests gold could be transitioning into a different kind of asset, behaving more like a risk-off asset than a traditional safe haven. If this trend holds, gold may continue its climb, solidifying its place in a new economic landscape. Business Bureau, WION World is One.
Let's now take a look at all the news from the world of technology. India's IT ministry has criticized Elon Musk's X platform after more than 100 bomb threats were issued to airlines in recent days. Many of these fake bomb threats were circulated through social media platforms. During a virtual meeting with airline and social media representatives, the ministry accused the social media platform X of enabling criminal activity and demanded answers about measures to stop these hoaxes. The threats caused panic among passengers and led to security alerts, with several flights, including international ones, being diverted. Union Civil Aviation Minister K. Ramohan Naidu warned that those behind such hoax bomb threats will face severe consequences, including being added to a no-fly list.
According to software giant NVIDIA's CEO Jensen Huang, the European Union is trailing the US and China in artificial intelligence investments. While Europe has a few AI companies like France, Mistral and Germany's Alpha, it recently introduced the world's first comprehensive AI regulations in August. During a visit to Copenhagen, Huang said the EU needs to speed up its AI advancements, noting that many countries are now seeing data as a valuable national resource. NVIDIA is the second largest US company by market value after Apple at $3.5 trillion.
Ubisoft has confirmed that the team behind Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown has been disbanded and reassigned to other projects. Prince of Persia, The Lost Crown, was released in January to a positive reception from critics and users and was one of the top-rated games of 2024. However, reports suggest it struggled to meet sales expectations during a tough year for the French publisher. Ubisoft clarified that no layoffs occurred as a result of the disbandment, with most team members moving to other projects. The Lost Crown was the company's first Prince of Persia release in over a decade.